You want to start your gardening season off the right way with healthy soil. The best way to ensure this is a soil test. So in this video today, I'm walking you through the easiest soil test you can do as a home gardener at home. It's super quick, no nerd degree required. And I'll walk you through how to take the samples, how to send them back. We're looking together at the results. And at the end, I'm also going to answer a few questions from my followers, which I got over the last couple of weeks. I'm Steffi, I'm a home gardener here in Attleboro, Massachusetts, is Zone 6, and I love to take you along with me how I prepare for my garden success this year. So why doing a soil test? A soil test is really which will help you to understand in the beginning of the year what is the situation with your soil going into the upcoming growing season. For me, it's always really helpful to see where I need to amend things. Do I have still the right pH? What is the nutrient level? I plant very, very densely in my garden, which means I'm taking up a lot of nutrients out of the soil, which I want to make sure I replenish into the soil so that all my seed babies have a good starting position to get going in the year. That is the main reason. And it's also always hard to tell. You can't look at soil and say, that's missing or that's missing, right? So there's really no other way to tell what the situation is other than maybe seeing that your seedlings or your plants are not thriving in the summer, but then it's already kind of late to mitigate. So I always prefer to prepare rather than mitigate later. So soil testing definitely falls into this chapter here. What do I do for soil testing? I use the My Soil Testing Kit, and that video is in no way sponsored. I just love using them. They give me the convenience. They are fast, and I'm using them now for the 4th year in a row. And now I have like data which I can compare, which we'll see later in the video, next to each other. And so far, everything they have suggested and what I put into action based on their recommendation has turned out very well. So I do trust those results these days. If you have a little bit more time and don't necessarily want to have that level of convenience, you can also go to your local extension office. So here in Massachusetts, for example, the University of Massachusetts Amherst has their own agriculture department, which does and runs soil tests for a little bit less than the My Soil Test kits are. So those kits are typically around $25 to $30, depending on how many you buy. And I think last time I looked, the UMass test runs at like $18, but it takes longer. So for the My Soil Test kit, when I send it in till I got the results, I think that was like in less than 10 days turnaround. So it's really, again, nice and convenient. And the ones who know me already a little bit, I prefer it simple. I wouldn't call it lazy, but definitely simple for the busy life I'm living outside of my garden shenanigans. So for that reason, I really enjoy how easy they are. So what do we need to take a soil sample? In the end, we only need the testing kit plus like a shovel, or if you have like a soil probe. I've done so many soil tests. I got myself one of those little soil probes because it makes the soil sampling just a little notch easier, but a shovel is perfectly fine. I take a soil test for each of my beds. This is the cut flower beds on those L's, and then each of my vegetable beds inside, because they are pretty much little ecosystems by itself. So I want to make sure that I treat them as that, and we'll see later in the soil test results that the results come back quite differently from bed to bed. So I want to make sure that I treat really each bed with what it truly needs. So how do I do this then is I go around for my beds. For the larger ones, I take more soil samples, but for the 8x4 vegetable bed, for example, I typically take like 6 or so samples from like each corner, a little bit from the middle, so that I feel like I have a good soil sample across from the entire bed in the plastic bag. And then I just mix it around in the plastic bag and use that then to scoop with the My Soil Testing scoop out of the kit into the probe. And that has worked, again, very, very well in previous years. For the larger beds, for my cut flower L's, I take a few more samples along the way, but same logic. And again, it has worked quite well in that regard. For the soil test kit, you literally, all you need is the scoop of soil, put it into that container, and then it even comes with an pre-cleared envelope where you put in the soil sample, put your address on, and drop it off at UPS. So for me, from the moment I took the soil samples, I did that on a weekend, dropped them on Monday. I had the results, I think, back next week, Wednesday or so. Cool thing is also you get a notification from the moment they get like punched into a USPS so that the soil sample is received and on its way when it comes to the laboratory, and then later on when the results are done, which is exciting. It's fun to see them going. And what you get back is a really, really cool analysis, which we can look at together. Before we look at the dashboard and the results from my soil tests, what I want to quickly talk about are the key ingredients or the key nutrients which are important to the soil health and the ones I'm looking out for. So I'm not a soil expert by any means, but what is important to me are the main nutrients, which we all know from our fertilizer, the NPK, right? The nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium. Those are the big three drivers for the different, for the growth, right? The nitrogen is typically the one which encourage a lot of growth and a lot of like green growth. The phosphorus is what the plants need to bloom strong and to have a lot of fruit set. And the potassium is typically created just with overall plant health and like basically being like the immune system builder of the nutrients. And then when it comes to the pH, what is there important to me is also that it's in an optimal level, because if it's too high or if it's too low, it will impact the ability of a plant to uptake nutrients alongside out of the soil. Of course, the soil environment or the soil ecosystem is a lot more complex. You have there some other macronutrients like calcium, magnesium, and phosphor, who are also really critical to the overall plant health. Think of it as your vitamins next to like your carbs, your fats, and your protein, which you take up in your own nutrition, right? So that is the vitamins to keep you happy, healthy, and fit. And there are a lot of like micronutrients, like minerals for the human, which have an impact as well. For me, to keep it simple, I'll look at the NPK and the pH, and then maybe have a little bit of an eye on the macronutrients. But for that, I've been served, or I've been fared very well with that logic in my area. I would love to read up this year a little bit more on the details of the soil web and all that ecosystem, because that is only the chemical portion of the soil. There is a lot larger portion on the biological side, which those soil tests don't take into account, like the fungi and the nematodes and everything what makes up the soil in the end. But I've noticed, and I have like seen in the past, that starting with a soil test, as basic as it is, it's really what can set you up for success for the growing season. So that's why I'm doing it every year in spring, whenever I get a chance and the ground is not frozen, to take a soil sample in around February to get going and understand what I need to add per bed for a happy start for my plants into the gardening season. All right, let's look together at the dashboard from my soil test, which is a really, really great one. You can see here I have a lot of history. You see here my 2023, 2022, 2021 results. I don't have each and every bed because over the time we added more beds. So for a few beds, I have now like 4 years worth of data here, but it's really super simple and very, very intuitive. When you send off your soil testing kit, you typically register here your new ones and provide the number which is on the test kit. That is how they link the results later to your account. Put in the registration number again. You have like, you define the sample type, like is it for a vegetable garden or ornamental stuff, when it was taken, and like one little description. That is typically where I put the name of my bed in it, so I know in the end what this soil sample came from. And then they ask just here if it's square feet whatsoever. Yep, so that is very simple. And then later on, you'll get the results back, and the results are really, really cool. So when we look into it, when it's completed, and you could log into before and then see the status if it's in analysis whatsoever. So from the dashboard, we can go into an example here for my first bed. For example, you see here when the soil test was analyzed, for which bed it is. It's a vegetable garden one. And the cool thing here is we see all the details in the results, right? So we have here a nice graph which shows all of our nutrients and where they sit. And you can see here there's an area which is the optimal range. And I'm actually very happy what I see. You might be shocked how low the nitrogen is. That is something what I have to add every year. Again, I plant super densely. What is also important to know is that nitrogen is a nutrient which flushes out super easy. So when you think of the NPKs, the P, the phosphorus, is the one which sticks around the longest. And that is one thing which I had to learn badly when I took like the first soil test. I added a lot of compost to my garden. When I started it, it was a 50-50 mix of normal like loam type of soil and compost, and a few other things mixed in like perlite to give it some structure and give it some air in it. But it had a lot of organic matter in it, and compost oftentimes comes with a high phosphorus level, and that is hard to get rid of because that builds down very slowly. So, and the higher the phosphorus is, the less, for example, calcium can be put up by a plant. So that causes some other issues with plants. So it is always good to keep your nutrients in the same range. And for that reason, it's also important to understand the impact of fertilizer in your bed. When I started gardening, I thought the more the better. I was dumping copious amounts of fertilizer here and there into my beds without knowing the effects. For example, that I was building up phosphorus in the beds more than I should have. And now I'm now in the second year of mitigating that newbie mistake and trying to get hold of it. But we'll see shortly that my results show that my measures I took are working, which is a great encouragement for me to keep doing what I'm doing with the soil test and always like looking at the data and acting accordingly to the data. But it was just an honest mistake in the beginning, not knowing what I know these days and just dumping fertilizer. And what's important with fertilizer is to have actually only a third of phosphorus to nitrogen in a good ratio, to not get like out of whack like I got. So when I go now and look at any type of fertilizer I use under the season, I never use a balanced one like a 10-10-10 or something like that for as in like an all-purpose fertilizer for my garden. I always look for one which has higher nitrogen, a third less phosphorus, and then a high potassium again. So that is typically what I'm looking for in fertilizers. And last year I even skipped amending my entire garden with any kind of compost to again give them a year break in any type of amendments which could cause the phosphorus to spike even further. This year I will add a little bit more compost because also we had last year so much rain that I really want to, or that my beds got compacted so much that they need like almost like 4 to 6 inches each bed to be topped off to be full again. I'll do a second video probably like end of March or so when we apply the amendments recommended by the soil test together and see how that goes then. But it is important to know your data and also know how to interpret your data. When we look a little bit further, so we have here this beautiful graph, but we have here also the raw data where we can see all the different, like our actual results in numbers, what is the optimal range, and what is the rating here. And over here we see we have a lot of little things which are under the mark. I always rather prefer to have things under the optimal amount. It's always easier to add than take things out. That is always something what I would recommend to keep in mind. Nitrogen is super easily added. That is not a concern of mine. The only concern I have is if something is over the optimal range, how can I get it in? Again, that takes a lot more effort and a lot more strategy than bumping things up slowly but surely. And what is my most favorite thing with my soil test over here is the fertilizer recommendation. And they have always an organic version and they have a synthetic version. As you all know, I'm an organic gardener. I don't take any synthetics in my garden. I'm very proud of it. Very persistent of doing that. So, but I love that they have an organic version here. And you can also, they calculate it for you. So for example, my vegetable bed is 8x4, which is 32 square feet, right? Once you put the square footage in, you see that from this recommended fertilizer, we would need to add 2 pounds to make up for the gap in nutrients. And this is such a convenience. They give you exactly the fertilizer you need. You can look at it or just go off and buy something similar from a different brand you might know and might prefer, right? But it gives you a really, really great starting point where you know what you need to do to amend your bed for success for the upcoming growing season. All right, let's look at a comparison now. That is the cool thing with the data and using the same provider year over year. You have the same level of like graphs and data available to actually see your progress also with the amendments you did. So I picked here, again, we looked already at the 2024 results from vegetable bed number 1, but here you can see on the left-hand side how it looked in 2023. And this is a beautiful example where my phosphorus was way high. I wasn't able to mitigate the phosphorus in each and every bed how I was able to do it in this bed. And the reason is probably in the plants I had in the certain bed. In this bed from 2023 in the season, I had it full with fruiting plants like peppers and tomatoes who use the phosphorus up to really, or who utilize the phosphorus to build fruit and set fruit. So this was really, really great to see how well they were able to take this spike, which was a significant spike from phosphorus, down to an optimal level, right? But they also used up a lot of other nutrients. They reduced the zinc and the iron by a lot, but that could have also been like flushed out to some extent with all the water we had last year. That is always something what you also gotta like keep in mind. What were the weather conditions in between soil tests? And we had so much rain in the past 12 months that I was prepared to see some nutrients just being flushed away, because that happens with a lot of them, nitrogen being one of them. But again, adding is always easier than taking out, so that is none of my concerns. So that is really what I love to see, that between the years and the soil test and the actions I took, that I have the progress that I wanted to see. So that is a great success and just makes me more confident in my abilities to really prepare the soil and amend it the way my plants and my garden needs it for success for the upcoming season. All right, now I also wanted to address a few questions which I got from my followers on my Instagram page, who saw me like taking the soil samples a couple of weeks ago already on my feed, because I posted it in stories and put up a question sticker. So one of the most common questions were like, what company did you use? We've seen this already in the video that was in my soil test one. By the way, you find everything in the description below, the links to the soil probe, the soil test kits, etc. So you have it all below. Then the other most common question was, do you do just one test for your garden, or do you test each bed, or what's your logic there? I do test each and every bed of mine, because I see them as like one ecosystem, but you do you. It is expensive, those kits for each and every bed, because I need 8 soil tests to test my entire garden. For that reason, that is not the cheapest thing, but I just plan for it every year now and have the budget set aside for it. So that it's just something what is so important to me that I don't like to skip it in this way. And then the other question was, filling new beds this year, getting free compost from a dump, is it still valuable to do a test? I would say so, if you have the time between like filling the beds and before planting, so that you have some time to put the amendments in before you start planting. I would encourage it, because I'm not sure where you get the free compost from, but that is something where I'm always a little bit cautious and would like to see with what you start off, right? And again, I had a lot of compost in my soil previously, and that caused me that phosphorus issue, which in the end can lead to like stunted plants and not really growing plants. So for that reason, I would recommend to, yeah, maybe just run one test and see what you're working with. And then another one was, do you see major changes from year to year? I wouldn't call it major changes, but I see changes as we just saw them from bed 1 to bed 2 based on the actions I took from last year's soil test. So I do like to see those changes year after year, because it really helps me to make and learn from the results and the actions I took. So yes, it's important for me, and with the changes, I learn a lot about those actions. And then another question from the same person was, are you going to change what you plant based on the results? No, I do not. And that is like one thing why I do the testing as well, is I want to basically level set all beds back to a good starting point, so that we are able to really have success no matter what I plant in which bed for what I have planned. So I'm not adjusting or amending differently based on if it's a vegetable bed or a flower bed. I'll try to get them all back into the optimal range to have a good starting point for the year to come. And then there was one question or one comment, I get overwhelmed and then I don't do it. I need soil testing for dummies. Well, my video was an easy breakdown for you to follow it and try it. And truly, like with the My Soil Test Kit, there is not much what you can do wrong unless you like open the container, stumble, and let the fluid escape, because that is critical to leave it in the soil test kit. But it's really, really nice described. It's really hard to mess it up. So I would encourage you to give those ones a try for the ease and convenience of use. All right, those were all my questions. So I really hope this little bit more tactical video was helpful to you to really like take some anxiety or take some fear away that it's complicated or you need to have any special equipment or so. You truly don't, and it really will set you up for success for the next growing season. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments. I always love to help. And then otherwise, subscribe and watch another video.